Cameroon's President Paul Biya has been in power for close to 40 years now. By the year 2025, when his present mandate expires, he would have spent 43 years, becoming the longest-serving non-monarchical president in the world. As the days go by, the succession question is becoming more apparent as it animates political and civil society discussions. The visit by French President Emmanuel Macron to Cameroon has once more thrown open the issue on the plate of political and civil society actors. The question remains, will President Paul Biya seek another mandate after 2025, or will he be ready to hand over to a much younger person? Why not a much younger generation, as he was asked during the press conference in the visit of President Emmanuel Macron. Our guest today is a member of the opposition. He has the intention of going in for the 2025 presidential elections. He will be telling us the issue opposition party leaders are having with President Paul Biya stay in power, and also what the future holds for the country. Stay with us. My guest is an experienced professional in the domains of diplomacy, political communication, international relations, human resource management, capacity building, peace negotiation, as well as business development. He is the president of the United Socialist Democratic Party, one of the political movements in Cameroon, hoping to unseat the ruling CPDM in the 2025 presidential elections. The president is right here with me, Prince Michael Nsoesie. Thank you very much for talking to us.
Thank you very much, Nsoesie. It's my pleasure to be here, and I am honored to be one of those politicians that have been, I can say, the first to come to your TV.
Thank you very much. Now, you followed closely the visit of President Emmanuel Macron to Cameroon. What general appraisal do you make of it?
Well, basically, the visit of the French President Emmanuel Macron to Cameroon is something which personally I appreciate and I welcome, and I expressed my congratulations for the initiative by those who made it possible, and I think that it was timely, and I want to say that I appreciate his visit to Cameroon.
Yeah, you just mentioned that the visit was timely. What were some of the events which you think necessitated the fact that Emmanuel Macron should come to Cameroon?
Well, I think we all hold that France is one of those countries, those colonial masters, though in real terms and in proper analysis of history, France was never a colonial master to Cameroon. But Cameroon was given to France and Britain as mandatory territories. You know, so that why Britain managed southern Cameroon's, what was called back then West Cameroon, which is now Southwest and Northwest. The French manage East Cameroon, which is the other 8 regions of Cameroon now. So, but at the same time, the French policies have really affected the Cameroon projects and Cameroon's life in very extensive measures. And so, given the fact that we have a major conflict now between the concept of secessionists or the concept of separatists carrying out an initiative of wanting to put pressure on the regime to go back to the initial concept of reunification. We think that the conflict had an international view, and the coming of a foreign president like French President Emmanuel Macron should be able to give us a perspective of international intervention, and at the same time the intervention of a foreign power like France that has very close ties with Cameroon.
But now you just mentioned about the conflict. Do you think that France has done enough to resolve or to at least mount pressure, or why not collaborate with the Cameroon government in a bid to resolve the crisis?
Well, in terms of internal diplomacy, I will not want to delve into the nitty-gritties or to explain what happens in the corridors of power because I'm not a member of government. Yet. But at the same time, I want to believe that certain discussions have been going on since the onward or since the beginning of the Anglophone crisis. And at the same time, I believe that it is important for us to also know that, in my view, the conflict in the Northwest and Southwest is not an entirely responsible, foreign bodies are not entirely responsible for the resolution of the crisis. I believe that we have the responsibility, first of all, to be able to create the necessary atmosphere. And the first responsibility goes to the government in place to be able to initiate measures on how this conflict can be resolved. So if discussions have been going on between the government of Cameroon and the French government on the resolution of this crisis, I will not really know the details, but I know that discussions have been going on, not only with France, but with other countries. We have seen international diplomats make tweets or make declarations, like America and other countries have made very serious statements with regards to the conflict which is going on in the Northwest and the Southwest. So basically, I believe that looking at it from a diplomatic point of view, France may necessarily come to be able to give a suggestion, to the way out to the conflict with the presence of Emmanuel Macron.
Now, I'm talking about the suggestion. Emmanuel Macron, during the press conference, stated that he's supporting government's decentralization drive. What do you have to say to that, putting the fact that most opposition political parties and actors have always frowned at government's handling of the crisis, and the fact that some of them maintain that decentralization is not the solution?
Basically, I am not with the school of thought on the issue of decentralization, because decentralization has been a policy that was enacted by the regime of Mr. Paul Biya for the past getting to 24 years now. And we cannot see reasons why to initiate policies should take this long. In my view, these are policies which will never work. And that is why in our party, the proposal that we have made stems from the fact that we can be able to preserve one nation and two systems, which will get its characteristics from the abolished federal system of 1961. Whether it's going to be 10-state federation or it's going to be 2-state federation, that will be determined now by the Cameroonian people. But at the same time, we, from the USDP point of view, we believe that when we have a situation like this one, where we have 10 regions already, which have been clearly demarcated, the boundaries of those regions are clearly demarcated from national policies, then it is easier also to be able to formulate
a federal system.
Yes, a federal program that meets up with the 10 regions. And it may be possible that we also increase the regions or the divisions or the subdivisions. So Cameroon is not a tiny state as compared to other states. The vastness of the territory is so great that we cannot contemplate on whether we can be able to manage the territorial boundaries or the nitty-gritties or the problems that people try to raise up with regards to the issue of federalism. Federalism remains a form of government that works and that should work and that will work in the context of Cameroon. So the issue of decentralization, regionalization, I heard the French president was talking more about regionalization as compared to the decentralization that has been sung for the past 24 years now. So, and in my view, he is talking from the perspective of what obtains in France, because France operates within the context of regionalization. And that is why I think that the country has experienced prosperity. It has experienced a lot of development. And when people are allowed to be able to maximize their full potential, because in this country is absolutely blessed with a lot of resources, both physical, mental, natural resources. Cameroon is blessed. So we can move this country forward with a system of government that works, that can work, and that will always work.
Now, but looking at the statements of Emmanuel Macron talking about regionalization, does that not in any way disturb opposition party members like you who have a different political program?
Well, President Macron is a president of France. He's not a president of Cameroon. And if I am the president of Cameroon, I know what is going to work for Cameroon. I must not necessarily take from what he says. Maybe he's just giving an example of what works for him, but it must not necessarily be what is going to work for Cameroon. Cameroon has practiced federalism before, and it worked. So those people who are there trying to discard the fact that federalism is a form of government that has been practiced before in Cameroon and that worked before, and are trying to be able to contain power only around within some scopes of people, they I can say they are on the wrong side of history.
All right. Now, before the coming of Emmanuel Macron, you wrote an open letter to him in which you brought out the issue that has been animating a public debate for many weeks, particularly here in Yaoundé, talking about the succession issue. In the build-up to the visit of Emmanuel Macron, we saw flyers of the Frankist movement, the movement that has been formed to champion the son of the president to take over power. Why did you come up with that particular message?
Well, I don't want us to only focus on the issue of the movement of the son of President Paul Biya, who that goes around, which continues to be as a provocation to Cameroonians. But I want us to also focus on the fact that there are different points that I raised in that document that I sent to the French president. It could be an open letter, but I want to assure you people that that letter went too far.
Too far.
So those are things that I want Cameroonians to know, that the things that we do are not just only on social media. They have very great ramifications in terms of the politics of this country. And it also affects international relations. So I want to say that in that letter, I mentioned that the anti-French sentiments in Africa, and particularly in Cameroon, is growing every day. And the reasons why the anti-French sentiments is growing in Africa and in Cameroon is because Cameroonians and Africans, they feel that the French are responsible for their underdevelopment. And the fact that presidents can stay for 40 years and 45 years, get to 50 years, like what we obtained in Cameroon, as a result of the French backing. So I was calling on the attention of the French president that as he comes to Cameroon, he should be able to understand the mindset of Cameroonians. And these are the kind of things that Cameroonians are thinking about. So he has to reverse those thoughts. He has to give a different impression of what Cameroon, especially younger generations, have as impression about French intervention in African countries. That is one. The second point I raised was on the issue of the CFA. The CFA is a currency that about 14 African countries are using.
Yes.
And they have been using it for the past 60 years now. And many Africans and many Cameroonians believe that the CFA is not a currency that portrays the potential of our natural resources. Because, for example, you cannot get gold in Cameroon and you sell it in the stock market or in the international market in CFA.
In CFA.
You sell it but in dollars. And now it is a dollar that determines the quality of the gold. So, I mean, the value of the gold. So now, if we have to use a currency that, first of all, we don't manage, which is printed somewhere else, those are all questions that comes in the minds of Cameroonians, in the minds of Africans, and they feel that the CFA is not beneficial to the development, the economic breakthrough of Cameroon and Africa. So it's just a perspective. It's a mind frame that I'm trying to give to the president, the French president, to think about those areas. The other point I mentioned was the issue of I mentioned that earlier, their support for dictatorial regimes in Africa, you know, and we believe that in Cameroon, people are not free when it comes to the issues of democracy. The democracy in Cameroon is a democracy that people believe that it's a democracy in paper or on paper, but it's not a democracy in practice, because there is nowhere in any real democracy that you have one individual who controls the country and controls everything, changes the laws and the constitution of the country at his will. That's not democracy. We don't have a democracy where the National Assembly of the country or the Senate cannot discuss the issues, the burning issues of the country. Like, for example, the conflict which is going on in the Northwest and the Southwest. The National Assembly or the Senate has never put it on the table to be able to discuss it. People who have tried to bring it up at the National Assembly have been chased out of the country, and some of them have been arrested and stuff like that. So we cannot talk about democracy in a context like that. So I was trying to bring the president of France, the perception of the level of democracy in this country. And you remember that USDP is part of a political come together of some very intelligent people and political party leaders who have looked at the issue of the electoral code. And we believe that the reason why elections in Cameroon are not free and fair is because of the composition of the electoral code. And so we sat down and we brought out some aspects which we felt it was going to be accepted by all.
Accepted by all.
By all, yeah. And even with the ruling party. And we went towards them. We sent a copy of that document to the president, and we sent it also to different state institutions, making them to understand that they should be able to look at those elements that we drew up. It is a consensual reflection of certain provisions of the electoral code. We didn't go to have details of the revision of the electoral code. So if they are unable to even look at that document and try to agree with us that there are some aspects in the electoral code that should be looked at, then we cannot be talking about democracy. Now,
you maintain that democracy on Cameroon is on paper, but the government will argue with you that they have made significant strides, setting up an electoral commission, which before the Ministry of Territorial Administration handled elections. They will tell you that the political space in Cameroon has been opened with about 217 political parties, including yours, that are in the country. They will also argue that the elections that are being held have also been supervised by international observers who have, given a positive mark to these particular elections. Why do you think that this move by the government is not enough?
Government has its position on certain things. If you are in power, you have that ability to be able to make certain declarations, and you try to enforce it with certain laws in order to maintain grip on power. That's very normal. But when we're talking about democracy, we're not just talking about certain things that people just carry out actions in the name of democracy. We must understand that democracy has principles. In the electoral, in ELECAM, for example, how many of the board members of ELECAM are members of the opposition? That's a question that you have to respond to Cameroonians maybe later on. But the point is this: I believe strongly that if we want to have true elections, there are certain things that has to be done. For example, the opposition has greatly emphasized on the biometric system, which the regime claims that it is too expensive. But there are other smaller countries in Africa that have enacted the biometric system of voting. And it has worked for them. So I don't understand why people make claims on things that are not genuine. People have the impression that politicians are tellers. Yeah. But I have a different view. And but with all this kind of things that is said and done, people will want to have that general perception that politics is a dirty game. But I will want to maintain that politics is not a dirty game. It's unfortunate that sometimes we have actors in the political landscape of the world, and particularly in Cameroon, whose minds are dirty. And once your mind is dirty, eventually you carry out dirty actions and you say dirty things. Dirty things like telling lies and saying things which are not true. So I believe that if we want to really make this country to become a great country, we must be able to compete with the highest form of democracy. When people say, oh, American democracy is not supposed to be the same in Cameroon, I'm not asking us to compare with America. As a matter of fact, we don't have to compare with America. We must compare with ourselves. If you want to grow, don't compete with anybody else. Compete with yourself. Do those things that are right, and that will create, happiness for your people. And so for Cameroonians to be happy, they must be able to participate in elections. And those are one of the responsibilities of a citizen. And how many people participated in the past elections in Cameroon? The voters' apathy is growing every day because of the ways that elections are being carried in Cameroon. And even the Anglophone crisis as a result of the ways that this ruling party has been able to carry out elections in Cameroon. So there are a lot of things that are also very, very serious when it comes to election, because it has to do with people making their choices. And if you don't give people the opportunity to be able to make decisions or to make decisions for themselves, you do what we call in French étouffer. You suffocate them.
You squeeze them.
You suffocate them, and at one point in time, they will explode, like what has exploded in the Northwest and the Southwest in front of our eyes.
All right. Now, Doctor, let's look at the main succession issue that has been animating public opinion, like I mentioned earlier. President Paul Biya will mark 40 years in power on the 6th of November 2022. Many people of the opposition find it disturbing. Why does the opposition find the president's stay in power disturbing?
Well, I want to say that I'm a very young man, and I was a toddler when President Biya became president. I didn't know anything about politics until some few years ago that I became interested and I got involved. As a matter of fact, I would have been involved into politics with or without USDP, because I studied political science and I began to understand the concept of leadership and many other things that I felt that it was my responsibility as a citizen to make ultimate contributions for the growth of my country, for the development of my nation, for the prosperity of my nation, for the satisfaction of the citizens of this country, especially my generation and the generation that is supposed to come. So I eventually think that the issue of state to power didn't really mean anything to me until recent years. So let's assume that I count Mr. Biya as the president of this country since 2018 presidential election, which I eventually took part actively, and I was one of the key actors in that election. So that is where I want to base my judgment. But at the same time, it is mind-boggling to understand that someone, an individual, will stay in one position for 40 years. In psychology, the brain has a limited frame, that is a limited span. After a certain age, the brain becomes weak and it cannot actually be that performant. And where I see President Biya is in that position where if he was my father or my grandfather, I obviously want to take care of him, help him to do one or two things, and so on and so forth. You know, but given the fact that he is still holding a responsibility that demands a lot, being the president of USDP party has drained me a lot. Thinking about the responsibility of being the president of the country. That's why you see, even, I'll take you an example of Macron. President Macron was here a few hours ago. When President Macron became president, he was so young, looking so attractive and handsome. But the Macron I saw yesterday in Cameroon, you see that the responsibility of being the president has weighed him down to some extent. So it's a great responsibility.
And so you think that there's a relationship between staying in power and performance?
I believe that age has a role that it plays in life in general. And if you are 80 years, 90 years, there are things that you cannot do. There are things that you cannot do. And so, one of them, it retards your memory. I mean, your memory becomes retarded. Number two, your movement, physical movement, becomes retarded. And the speed at which you take certain actions are not like when you are young. So some people bring sometimes this analogy that what an old man sees sitting down, a young man cannot see if he climbs.
Well, some would argue that he has a cabinet, he has people who he can assign them to do those things and then supervise.
No, the truth is that when you look at the performance, government's performance in certain things, and some of the things, some of the declarations that even the President Biya has made, you discover that they are not working. You get the point? They are not working. For example, look at the Bamenda Ring Road that he promised more than 20 years ago, that he was going to personally supervise them. We are in 2022. I hope you know the state of the road now. So there are a lot of examples that I can give, but I don't want to get into all of those demeaning issues. But what I want to say is that the issue of succession is supposed to be democratic. And we must not allow somebody to make the decision for himself whether he's going out or he's staying in depends on him. It's supposed to be dependent on the Constitution. But it's rather unfortunate that the Constitution has been doctored in such a way that it gives the current president the opportunity to be able to even redoctor it as many times as he wants. So those are very unfortunate situations that we have to correct them now. And those measures are being taken for that to be corrected.
All right. The president was asked a question during the press conference on whether he will seek another term beyond 2025. And many Cameroonians have been waiting for him to make a statement on that. He instead asked the journalists to do the mathematics and then gave out suspense. To you who are in the opposition party, what reading do you make of it?
Well, for me, I make three readings out of that. Number one, he's just trying to play on the mind of the questionnaire, the person who asked the question, because it is said that if you want to weigh out someone who is asking you a question, behave as if you don't understand what he's saying or what she is saying. You keep asking often and often, and then the person gets irritated, and then probably will ask a different question that will be very convenient for you to answer. I feel that maybe from my reading, that's how I looked at it. The second reading is that probably President Biya is not seeing himself to be out of out of power anytime soon. So asking him that question is just like provoking him. So he doesn't want to answer it. He gives it back to you for you to make the calculations. Number 3, either that he has his own personal agenda of who he wants to recommend as his successor. And later on, for people not to start fighting the successor as early as possible, he keeps it secret. So those are the ways that I looked at the response that he gave yesterday from that question.
But now, for members of the opposition party, how do they perceive it? Those who are now in the opposition, are they in some sort of limbo, or they are trying to see how they could better prepare for the elections in 2035?
One thing is very sure. The USDP and a host of other opposition political parties are ready for the elections of 2025. That is very, very certain. If it is Prince Ekoso who is going to champion that league, the decision is going to be made. And the truth is that I think that the opposition is as ready as they were ready in all elections. So people should not sit in their houses or people criticizing the opposition and thinking that the opposition is doing nothing. We are working. USDP is working. As I sit here, I am ready if they call up elections even tomorrow.
Okay, now the issue of the Frankist movement, or let me call it the phenomenon of the Frankist movement, which has been on the lips of many. The movement appears to be growing. We also saw the public relations strategy which they played during the visit of Emmanuel Macron. Earlier in this interview, you called it a provocation. Why do you think such a move is provocative?
Well, the issue is that there are a lot of debates about the legality or legitimacy of Frank Biya as a Cameroonian to run for office. I don't have any problem with that. Where I have problem is the fact that if it was Prince Ekoso who put up banner of himself all over the country, I would have been in Connecté by now. That's a sure fact. Those are the things that I want Cameroonians to know and to see. If it was, let me say, Maurice Kamto of
the CRM, Cameroon Renaissance Movement,
and or maybe SDF of John Frundi, or some other very serious opposition parties in this country, that person would have been arrested and it would have been some kind of brouhaha today. So the question I ask is Frank Biya allowing himself to be in this situation because of pressure, or it is the consistent manipulations that we have had from the ruling party that is trying to be reborn in another way? Because I don't see it normal. First of all, it is not legal. We don't know whether the movement is a political party or it is just a movement, or whether the movement is even legalized. Number 2, what is the legitimacy for someone who is not a member of parliament, who is not a president of an opposition political party, he is not any member of government, to make posters, and the government allow the posters to be hanging all over the streets of Yaoundé? Those are things that are very, very serious, and to me, I call it provocation. And they want the opposition to come out, and start protesting, and then they will arrest people, and they start saying that ce sont les ennemis de la nation. They want to destabilize the country. Because tomorrow, I'm going to put my banner in the nooks and crannies of the city of Yaoundé. I want to see that authority that's going to come and arrest me. But it's unfortunate that it's going to come up when the president of France has gone. Good. So we don't know who Frank Biya is. The only thing we do is that we see him on TV beside his father when they are going for family issues, and sometimes some state issues that warrant family presence. All the other things are just some kind of manipulation. And I expect that they should be able to handle it as soon as possible before the things go offhand.
Now, how should they handle it? We are barely 3 years to the next presidential elections.
The authorities should be able to arrest those who put those banners out there. If they don't arrest them, nobody should be arrested for putting up banners for any organization for anything. We have seen how they organize rallies here and there, meetings here and there, and so on and so forth. Nobody has been arrested. So if they want to prove that there is democracy in this country, nobody should be arrested for his or her political opinion. That should be very, very clear.
All right, 2025 is coming, and you mentioned that the opposition is ready. I would like to ask again the very question now on the part of the USDP. How ready is the USDP for that particular election?
You know, my brother, my involvement into politics is not something that just came spontaneously or out of some interest here and there. You know, my passion for Cameroon, my passion for my country, my passion to see that this country becomes a country which is prosperous and stable and peaceful stems far back when I was still in Form 2. But I didn't know how to orientate it until now. So my passion to get involved in the politics of this country and my readiness has ever been there. And you remember that I made a declaration as far back as in 2009, thereabout, that I was going to be the next president of Cameroon. The next president doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to create coup d'etat. But the next president means that after the current president, no matter how long he stays in power, I am going to be the next president. So my preparation has been ever since. And that is why I work on that every day. I work on my leadership skills every day. I work on state protocols every day. I try to get the necessary information that I need every day to be able to, get myself ready. So I am ready right now. And as I said, with or without the USDP, my political vision is stable and it is consistent. So in politics, I want to say, like everybody says, that in politics or in international relations, you don't have permanent enemies. All you have is permanent interest. And so the interest which is permanent for me and many others is the prosperity of this country. And do I have the capacity for this country to be prosperous and to be more democratic and to respect human rights? I think I have it.
All right. Now, in the face of the political climate, there has been so much talk of a political consensus. Should there come a time when political parties need to put their heads together for the elections? Will the USDP will you decide to step down or maybe put in another person, gang up or collaborate with the person to win the elections?
Like I said, USDP is already in some sort of deliberations with about 7 political parties, which we worked for several months to come up with a consensus, a proposal, a consensual proposal of the electoral code. We are already into those let me say, partnership, which for me is fundamental. And I want to tell Cameroonians that the aspect of them trying to create a situation of what we call in French désespoir, hopelessness in the face of political change in this country. I want to plead with them that they should be patient. They should not be hopeless. The opposition is working on the ground, and we believe that at the right moment, if I am qualified, I will be the opposition candidate. If I'm not qualified, somebody else is going to be, and we will be able to team up. USDP, like I said, I must not necessarily be the president of USDP. I must not necessarily be the one to champion USDP or the candidate for USDP. If someone comes up today like we did in 2011, like we did in 2018. In 2011, we endorsed the candidacy of Madame Kawala. Yeah. In 2018, we endorsed the candidacy of Barrister Akeremuna, former bâtonnier. And after then, we finally aligned now with Professor Maurice Kamto during that presidential election. So the issue is not necessarily about me. It's about the country. So whatever is going to work for the country, USDP has always supported that. But I believe that it's also time for people to see USDP as selfless, and those are the qualities that is necessary for good leadership.
All right. Last year you announced an internal reorganization of the party. Where are we with the process?
Yeah, I think maybe recently, I think about a month ago, I was in Limbe, precisely in Fako. We are doing a lot of work there. But I want us to understand that before the advent of the crisis, USDP was in the nooks and crannies of this country. We were in Gabo, we were in Bambala, we were in Bambesi, we were in all the villages, we were in Kombone, we were everywhere. We were everywhere. In Limbe, you remember? In Douala, we had a bureau in Douala. In Betua, I used to travel a lot back then. Even in America, in France, in Germany, I have all the reports of those comrades over there who were always organizing meetings and making their reports. But unfortunately, the Anglophone crisis, came and radicalized a lot of people. So if you look at it clearly and squarely, not only within the context of the Anglophone crisis, or let me say the Anglophone crisis has also radicalized many Cameroonians, not only the Anglophones. You see, for example, the rise of a movement like the BAS, what they call Brigade Anti-Sadina. Those are all elements of radicalization. Those are all characteristics of radicalization. Cameroonians have become radicalized because of the experience that they have had, and that they are moving from formal political responsibility to some kind of radicalization, which they feel that becoming radical will be able to give them the opportunity to be able to bring down the system that be. But we have always remained serene. Mr. Koso has always remained serene, trying to look at the possible ways which is democratic for us to be able to get into the position of doing what is necessary for the growth of the country.
All right. Thank you very much, please, Michael Nsoesie. It's a pleasure having you on this edition of the program, and of course, we shall be having you other times.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to have been invited to your TV. And my prayer is that the TV grows to become the CNN of Cameroon.
Thank you very much. And to you, televiewers, it was a pleasure being with you in this edition of the program. Until next time, it's